What is up, everyone? Welcome back to our podcast. My name is Chris.
And my name is James.
And we are the Formula One Bros.
Just two twins with a love of F1 to share our thoughts on everything in the world of Formula One.
And welcome to our very first Grand Prix-View episode. These episodes are going to be just shorter in length. They'll air every Wednesday before the Grand Prix weekend, and we'll detail everything that you need to know about the upcoming race. This will include history about the Grand Prix, the circuit, race stats, summary of the previous year's event, and a preview for what we're going to be looking at and all the storylines that we're going to be looking at heading into the race. But first, before we get into that, some breaking news happened earlier today in the world of Formula One, and that is the official statement from Red Bull is that the charges against, or the investigation against Christian Horner has been dismissed, and he will remain team principal of Red Bull Racing. And as a reminder, this is involving a lot of legalese. There's a lot of stuff involved in this, so we're just going to be given the facts. No, we're not going to give our opinions or anything. We're just going to stick to the facts and everything that we know, because there's also a lot that we still don't know. And there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes. But this is the official statement from Red Bull, not the racing company, but the energy drink company from Austria. This is their statement. The independent investigation into the allegations made against Mr. Horner is complete, and Red Bull can confirm that the complaint has been dismissed. The complainant has a right of appeal. Red Bull is confident this investigation was fair and rigorous and impartial. The investigation report is confidential and contains the private information of parties and third parties who cooperated in the investigation, and therefore we will not comment further out of respect for all interested parties. Red Bull will continue to strive to meet the highest standards in the workplace. So that was the statement. That's about all we know. Christian Horner is going to remain team principal of Red Bull Racing. And I just want to mention real quick something that, hey, Cannoli, if you're watching on YouTube, you're getting a great view of
if I talk, it'll come to me. You can see my beautiful little kitty just sitting right in front of the camera.
But something that we talked about before we started recording was that the investigation coming from Red Bull, the parent company, is pretty unprecedented with this Red Bull team. They've kind of allowed the Red Bull team they've allowed them to have a lot of autonomy. And the fact that this is coming from the parent company, I think, at least to me, suggests that this was taken very seriously. And it was very important to the company, not only to get it resolved quickly, but to get resolved properly.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And like I said in previous episodes, it was going to move pretty quickly, and it did.
Yep. And it looks like we have a resolution now. The complaint, as it mentioned in the statement, the complainant does have a right of appeal. Whether or not that happens will remain to be seen. So I suspect that the saga is not over yet and will be simmering in the background. So whenever something pops up, we will be here to talk about it. Now, back to the Bahrain Grand Prix. Formula One is officially back this weekend with the first race of the year that will be held in Bahrain at the Bahrain International Circuit. This race has always occupied an early slot in the season, but ever since 2021, it's taken over as the traditional opening round to the Formula One Championship. This spot was previously occupied by Australia prior to the 2020 COVID shutdown, but COVID, as it did many things, changed that. The drivers will be racing on the Grand Prix layout of the circuit. There are several different layouts that this track has, but it runs in a clockwise direction, 15 turns, 3 DRS zones, and they will race for 57 laps. The Grand Prix version of the track is 5.412 kilometers or 3.363 miles, and has been the traditional layout for the race for every year except for one. That year was 2010, when the Bahrain Grand Prix used the endurance layout, which has 24 turns, is 6.299 kilometers or 3.914 miles.
Yeah. So the Bahrain Grand Prix was first held in 2004 and has been on the Formula One calendar every year since then, except for one, which was
2011.
2011. Okay. I actually didn't know that. The first winner of the race in 2004 was the incomparable Michael Schumacher driving for Scuderia Ferrari, which would be his one and only win at the track. So he only won there once. That year, the race was held as the third race on the calendar, which saw Rubens Barrichello come in second, which in 2004, Ferrari, it was pretty much every race was Michael Schumacher won, Rubens Barrichello second, with Jenson Button in his BAR rounding out the podium, which was very impressive. In a BAR, Jenson Button got a podium. Since the first race, Ferrari has been the winningest constructor, ending the race on top of the podium 7 times in the years 2004, 7, 8, 10, 17, 18, and 22. Despite Ferrari's success, it is actually Lewis Hamilton who is the driver who has the most wins of all time, which came for Mercedes. These victories were 2014, 15, 19, 20, and 2021. All of those seasons, except for 2021, would see Lewis Hamilton go on to win the championship. The current track record is held by Pedro de la Rosa, which was set in 2005 at the time of 1 minute, 31 seconds, and 0.447. And it was set in his McLaren MP 420. The overall Grand Prix track record was actually set by Michael Schumacher in 2004. That's like the race time, which was at 1 minute, 30 seconds. But the track as it exists today was reprofiled at turn 4 in 2004 and ahead of the 2005 season, which means that its current layout is De La Rosa. So the track, that is the official track record, is Pedro de la Rosa.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, so to talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix, the history of the Bahrain Grand Prix, you have to talk about some of the most controversial and sensitive moments in the sport's history. We will always, when we feel it necessary, when we have to talk about controversial things in F1, we feel it necessary to report on those. Yes, we're fans, but it's also important to be transparent in not only our podcast, but the way in which we consume the sport as a fan. And so we're always going to do our best to speak on these events with sensitivity and always remain objective and factual. I feel it's always important to talk about Formula One in its most genuine and truthful way, which will include moments like what we'll get into in the history of this race. The Bahrain Grand Prix was the first Formula One race to take place in the Middle East and fought off several other bidders to host a race in the region. That include Lebanon, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, which would ultimately get a Grand Prix. But the Bahrain Grand Prix has been held every year since 2004, except for 1 year. That year, 2011, the race was canceled due to ongoing Bahraini protests as a part of the Arab Spring uprising. The race was hopefully to be rescheduled for a later date in October, but the drivers, the teams, the FIA, Formula One, and the Grand Prix organizers could not settle on a date or terms for the Grand Prix to take place. The next year, the 2012 Bahrain Grand Prix went ahead as scheduled, but amid massive controversy. Activists called for the cancellation of the race due to the country's ongoing human rights abuses and authoritarian clampdowns on protests, which resulted in the death of several journalists and activists during the Arab Spring uprising. There were several team members of F1 teams competing in that year's Grand Prix that had gone to the FIA to ask for a cancellation or postponement of the race due to safety concerns because of the protests in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Additionally, a Force India team vehicle carrying mechanics and team personnel was involved in a petrol bombing during the race weekend, in which the car that they were in was stopped at a roadblock that was not clear before a bomb went off nearby. Fortunately, no team members were injured at all during the incident. But despite these events, protests, and even the potential for military intervention, the race went ahead as planned. The decision to hold the 2012 event is widely regarded as one of the most controversial decisions in the sport's history due to the sentiments that Formula One and the King of Bahrain were using the race to gloss over issues of human rights abuses and authoritarian rule in the kingdom. The event continues to spark controversy along with the other Middle Eastern races due to ongoing human rights issues in the countries that Formula One visits. This issue is something that obviously has been most led by and most talked about by Lewis Hamilton, seeing him in the especially last year and in 2021 or 2021, 22, and 23, really, going to the races in these races in the countries in this region, wearing, having pride flags on his helmet and just trying to raise awareness for human rights abuses in these countries. And it continues to be a controversial issue to this day.
So along with those controversies, there have been some pretty iconic moments at the Bahrain Grand Prix. It is definitely has always provided some very, very exciting racing. And I think in my personal opinion, I think it's a pretty good season opener. Australia and Bahrain are both pretty great season opening tracks. But the Grand Prix and the circuit have played host to some of the most iconic moments in Formula One, including Fernando Alonso's infamous radio message. I think you have to leave the space all the time. You have to leave the space. After Nico Rosberg raced him down the edge of the circuit, running up to turn 4. That was pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. The circuit has hosted another Grand Prix called the Sekir Grand Prix, which was held in 2020 as a bid to fill up the F1 schedule. Because if you don't fill up the F1 schedule with, I think now it's 18 races for it to be classified as a full F1 season. This was due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The race also famously took place a week after the Bahrain Grand Prix on the outer circuit layout, which recorded a track record of only 55 seconds, which is insane. But it was set by George Russell in a stand-in drive for Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, which that kind of started the legend of George Russell. This track record is the only one in record in modern F1 era to feature a sub 1 minute time. The races also saw Sergio Perez come from last place after lap 1 incident with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc to eventually win the race, which is absolute baller. Checo, that was probably Checo's best drive. And I think right after that race, he got the contract at Red Bull.
Yeah, it was pretty close. And I just remember that being like, when we came to the end of the race and after like the safety car period and after George Russell's puncture and everything, we were watching this, like, there's no way that Sergio Perez is going to win this race. And it was incredible to watch.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
And it was even crazier at the end of that season, he was out of a drive. And ultimately that race was like, Red Bull was like, yep, we're calling Sergio Perez for starting in 2021. And most famously, the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix was marred with the absolutely horrendous crash of Romain Grosjean, which saw his Haas dart towards the inside wall at the exit of turn 3 and hit it at 180 miles per hour. His car violently split apart, caught fire, and after almost 20 seconds, Romain Grosjean finally appeared. He was fine. He walked away from the crash. He did have some burns on his hands and feet. And this would ultimately lead to his nickname, the Phoenix, which is pretty badass.
Yeah, that was one thing that a crash that I, along with Dan Weldon at Las Vegas, where I remember exactly where I was and I could take you there now. It was the Dunkin' Donuts in Lexington, South Carolina. And I was getting ready to go home from grad school for the holidays. And I was sitting in my car in the drive-through line at Dunkin' Donuts, waiting for my little coffee and breakfast sandwich. And I saw that happen and my jaw was on the floor.
Yeah.
So anyway, so some more iconic moments. Be sure to let us know what your favorite Bahrain Grand Prix moments are.
Mine
I
has to be
think,
the you always have to leave the space.
yeah, that's a good one. And honestly, like it's one of, I have to say, it's a Tilka track, but it's one of my favorite Herman Tilke tracks. It's good. It has a little bit of everything, and it has been a really great mainstay of the Formula One calendar. I remember when Formula One first started going there, it was brand new, like, wow, this, brand new racetrack, this is incredible. And then like it's now just become a staple of the Formula One calendar.
Oh, Bahrain also hosted the hottest Formula One race on record. I believe that was 2006.
Yeah, it was after, I think it was after, no, it was actually pretty recently. When did they start going to the night race? Can you look that up?
It was 2014.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Honestly,
2014.
another iconic race in on Bahrain's history, because you had the never seemingly never ending duel between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg for the win,
That
which is,
lasted literally over half the race.
yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. Truly incredible. Um, cool. So switching gears a little bit, we're going to kind of recap what happened last year and set the stage for this year. So the 2013 or the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix was held on the 5th of March and saw Max Verstappen taking what would be the first of his record-setting 19 victories in a single season, which is insane to think about. I still can't get over that stat. This was also Red Bull's first victory at the circuit since Sebastian Vettel in 2013. Verstappen would lead Sergio Perez to a 1-2 victory, with Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin rounding out the podium places. And it was Aston Martin's first podium since Sebastian Vettel's P2 finish in a very wild ending to the 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. In that race, 3 rookies also made their F1 debut, and Oscar Piastri, Nick De Vries, and Logan Sargent, though only 2 of them would end up finishing the full season. The fastest lap of the race was set by Zhou Guanyu and his Alfa Romeo on lap 56 with a time of 1 minute 33.996, but would unfortunately not count for the fastest lap bonus point as he finished outside the points in P16. And
so this year's Formula One race in Bahrain in 2024, the race will actually be held this year on Saturday. And as opposed to its traditional start on Sunday, that is because the reason for that is because the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix is the next week, Ramadan, not Yom Kippur,
Ramadan
different
starts.
religion. Ramadan starts on that Sunday. And so in order for them to give them a full week of time in between the races, so that's why Bahrain's starting on a Saturday. They're racing in Saudi Arabia on Saturday the next week because of the religious holiday.
Which means we're recording this on a Wednesday evening, and we're going to wake up tomorrow and it'll be FP1.
Yay!
And I cannot wait to get a bigger picture of what's going to happen. I know if you watched or listened to our last week's episode, this is going to kind of be a little bit of a review, but let's just kind of go over some of the major talking points and major storylines that we're following heading into the Bahrain Grand Prix. The first of which was going to be this Christian Horner Red Bull saga that seems to be kind of put aside. I don't want to say put to bed, but put aside for now. So going into the race, James, what are some things that you're looking forward to going into this?
I'm at the oh gosh, there's a lot of storylines. One, how far ahead is Red Bull going to be? That's going to be a big one. Have the other teams in the top 4, have they closed the gap to Red Bull, or has everyone kind of just gone up the same amount? I'll also be curious to see how Ferrari's progress is going. It looks like right now that they're the second fastest team on the grid. So how far back are they going to be to Red Bull? Are they going to be right behind Red Bull, or is the race going to end with like a 45-second lead on Max Verstappen? So those are going to be the big things. Also, the other thing is typically in the past 2 seasons, McLaren has started off really, really poorly, but then made it up throughout the season. It seems like McLaren is starting off pretty well this year. They had a really, really good winter testing in Bahrain. So I would love to see McLaren start a little bit ahead too.
Yeah, I think speaking on McLaren, Lando Norris said something today in the press conference that he thinks that Ferrari is emphatically going to be head and shoulders above everybody else, still behind Red Bull, but above everybody else. And there's a lot of sentiment that they think that Ferrari can kind of be the biggest challenger to Red Bull. And there's even a potential maybe, that they've sacrificed a little bit of qualifying pace so that they can be better in the race, which would mean that maybe that they can fight Red Bull in the race. I like what you said about McLaren. I'm looking forward to it too, because if, the past couple of years, they've started off really slow, but you see throughout the season that they have a really, really strong capacity for development. So even if they're starting as the third fastest team, by the end of the season, who knows? Could there be a potential that they're fastest? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be something really interesting. I think I'm going to be really interesting. I think the two teams that I'm looking forward to seeing, or three teams that I'm looking forward to see the most is Mercedes, because there's been a lot of question marks around how well they did during testing. They didn't have the best testing that they've had in a couple of years, but not the best ever. There's still some question marks about how the team is doing. Haas had a really peculiar test. They ran more laps than anybody, but they started right away dialing in a race setup. So it'll be really interesting to see if they have a really good setup for Bahrain, see if they've gotten their tire wear situation figured out. And then Alpine, who had the worst test, I think, out of anybody. The drivers were complaining. They were saying in the press conference today that they're a long way off. So it'll be really interesting to see where those teams kind of shake out.
I'd also be really curious to see where Williams ends up too. As it seems like they're heading in the right direction, which is, I think, really, really awesome. So I'd love to see them make a step forward too.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of really exciting things that could potentially happen this season.
Yeah.
And we get to see it starting tomorrow.
And overall, I think, and this is just not just because it's Bahrain, but because it's the first race of the season, all of these are kind of under the context of just having a more complete picture of where everybody is. I think that is something that I'm most excited about, that we can look back after the race on Saturday and we can sit and say, yeah, hey, so here's what we got wrong from our preseason testing predictions. Here's what we got right. Here's, just having a more complete picture of where everybody is. That's really what I'm looking forward to. I don't think we'll have that by the end of FP1, certainly. No. Maybe I think at the earliest after qualifying, but who knows?
Yeah.
Certainly not us.
Regardless, it's going to be a very, 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 very exciting race.
It's going to be very exciting. So that'll do it for this episode. Be sure to let us know what you're looking forward to and what some of your favorite moments for the Bahrain Grand Prix history are. And we will see you next time after the Bahrain Grand Prix.